Maria's hands shook as she stared at the check in disbelief. $5 million. The man in the expensive suit smiled at her through tears. "This is just the beginning," he whispered. "You saved my daughter's life." But Maria couldn't understand why this rich stranger was giving her more money than she'd ever seen. All she had done was help a scared little girl in the park. Or so she thought. "Let me take you back to where it all started. Just 3 days earlier." Maria wiped the sweat from her forehead as she pushed the rusty shopping cart down the cracked sidewalk. The wheels squeaked and wobbled, making an awful noise that embarrassed her. Inside the cart were her cleaning supplies, old rags, a half-empty bottle of floor cleaner, and a broken vacuum she'd been meaning to fix for months. At 28 years old, Maria looked much older. Her clothes were faded and patched. Her shoes had holes that she covered with tape, but her eyes still sparkled with kindness, and her smile could light up any room even though she rarely had reason to smile these days. She was late for her job cleaning Mrs. Henderson's big house. Again, the old bus had broken down, and she'd had to walk 5 miles in the hot Sunday. Mrs. Henderson would probably yell at her. She always did when Maria was late. "You people are all the same," Mrs. Henderson would say in her mean voice. "No sense of time, no responsibility." Maria hated those words. She worked harder than anyone she knew. She cleaned 6 houses every week, took care of elderly Mr. Johnson next door, and still barely had enough money for food and rent. Her tiny apartment had no air conditioning, and the roof leaked when it rained. But it was all she could afford. As she turned the corner onto Maple Street where all the rich people lived, Maria felt that familiar ache in her stomach. Hunger. She hadn't eaten since yesterday morning. The $20 in her pocket needed to last until next week, and she still had to pay for bus fare. But then something made her stop. A sound. Crying. Maria looked around and saw a little girl sitting alone on a park bench. The child couldn't have been more than 6 years old. She had long blonde hair in fancy braids and wore a beautiful white dress that probably cost more than Maria made in a month. But right now, the little girl's face was red and covered in tears. Maria glanced at her watch. She was already 30 minutes late. Mrs. Henderson would be furious. She might even fire her, and Maria desperately needed this job. But she couldn't just walk past a crying child. Maria parked her squeaky cart and walked over to the bench. "Hello, sweetie," she said softly, crouching down to the girl's level. "Are you okay?" The little girl looked up with the biggest, saddest blue eyes Maria had ever seen. Fresh tears rolled down her cheeks. "I can't find my daddy," she whispered. Maria's heart broke. "What's your name, honey?" "Sophie," the girl sniffled. "Sophie Williams. That's a beautiful name. I'm Maria." She sat down on the bench, keeping some space so the child wouldn't feel scared. "Can you tell me what happened?" Sophie wiped her nose with her sleeve. "Daddy and I were walking to the ice cream shop. There were so many people, and I saw a pretty butterfly. I followed it, and when I turned around," her voice broke, "Daddy was gone." Maria looked around the busy park. There were hundreds of people walking around, jogging, and playing with their dogs. How would they ever find Sophie's father in this crowd? "Don't worry, Sophie. We'll find your daddy." Maria tried to sound confident, even though she felt scared too. "Do you remember his phone number?" Sophie shook her head. "He has it saved in his phone, but I don't know it by memory." "What about your address?" "We just moved here. I don't know the new address yet." Maria felt panic rising in her chest. This little girl was completely lost, with no way to contact her family. And judging by her expensive clothes and perfect hair, she came from a wealthy family that was probably worried sick. "Okay, let's think," Maria said, trying to stay calm. "What does your daddy look like?" "He's tall and has dark hair. He was wearing his work clothes, a black suit." Sophie's bottom lip trembled. "He looked important, like he was going to a meeting." A man in a black suit. In this part of town, that described half the men walking around. Maria felt hopeless, but she couldn't let Sophie see her worry. "I have an idea," Maria said. "Let's walk around the park together. Maybe we'll see your daddy looking for you." They spent the next hour searching. Maria pushed her cart with one hand and held Sophie's small hand with the other. They asked people if they'd seen a tall man in a black suit looking for his daughter, but everyone just shook their heads and kept walking. Sophie was getting tired and scared. She started crying again.
What if I never find him? What if he left without me?
Oh, honey, no. Maria knelt down and gently wiped Sophie's tears.
Your daddy would never leave without you. He loves you so much. I can tell.
He's probably looking for you right now, just as scared as you are. But what if... No what ifs, Maria said firmly but kindly. We're going to find him, I promise. It was a promise Maria wasn't sure she could keep, but she had to give Sophie hope. As the sun began to set, Maria's stomach growled loudly. She was dizzy with hunger, and her feet ached from walking. She'd completely missed her appointment with Mrs. Henderson. Her phone had been buzzing with angry calls that she ignored. But looking at Sophie's frightened face, Maria knew she couldn't abandon this child, not even for a job she desperately needed. Are you hungry, Sophie? Maria asked. Sophie nodded. A little... Maria looked at the $20 in her hand, her food money for the week. Then she looked at Sophie's sad face. The choice was easy. Come on, Maria said, taking Sophie's hand. Let's get you something to eat. They walked to a small cafe near the park. Maria bought Sophie a sandwich, some apple juice, and a cookie. For herself, she ordered just a small coffee, the cheapest thing on the menu. Aren't you going to eat? Sophie asked, taking a bite of her sandwich. I'm not very hungry, Maria lied, even though her stomach was aching with hunger. As Sophie ate, she started to relax a little. She told Maria about her old house, her pet goldfish named Bubbles, and how her daddy worked very hard at his office. He's always in meetings, Sophie said, but he makes time for me. Every day after school, we have ice cream together. It's our special tradition. Maria smiled. He sounds like a wonderful daddy. He is. He takes care of me all by himself. Mommy went to heaven when I was little, so it's just me and Daddy. Maria's heart squeezed with sympathy. This poor little girl had already lost her mother, and now she was lost and scared, separated from the only parent she had left. As the evening grew darker, Maria started to worry. What if they never found Sophie's father? What if something terrible had happened to him? What if Sophie had to spend the night alone and scared? But then Maria made a decision that surprised even herself. Sophie, she said gently, it's getting late, and we haven't found your daddy yet. But I promise you won't be alone tonight. If we can't find him soon, you can come home with me. It's not much, but it's safe and warm. Sophie's eyes filled with fresh tears, but this time they seemed like tears of relief. You would do that for me? Of course, sweetie. No child should be alone and scared. As they left the cafe, Maria's phone rang. It was Mrs. Henderson, and she sounded furious. Maria, where are you? I've been waiting all day. This is unacceptable. I'm sorry, Mrs. Henderson. There was an emergency. I don't want to hear your excuses. You're fired. Don't bother coming back. The phone went dead. Maria stared at the phone in shock. She'd just lost one of her most important jobs, a job that paid for a quarter of her monthly expenses. She was already struggling to pay rent, and now things would be even harder. But when she looked down at Sophie's trusting face, she knew she'd made the right choice. Who was that? Sophie asked. Nobody important, Maria said, forcing a smile. Come on, let's keep looking for your daddy. They searched until the park lights came on. They asked security guards, shop owners, and dozens of people on the street. But there was no sign of Sophie's father anywhere. Finally, exhausted and worried, Maria made the decision she'd been dreading. Sophie, I think we should go to the police station. They can help us find your daddy. Sophie's face went pale. The police? But what if Daddy thinks I was bad? What if he's mad at me for getting lost? Oh, honey, your daddy could never be mad at you for something like this. Getting lost happens to everyone. He just wants you to be safe. They walked to the nearest police station, Maria pulling her squeaky cart behind them. The officer at the front desk was kind, but not very hopeful. We'll put out a missing person report, he said. But without a phone number or address, it's going to be difficult. The father is probably looking for her too. Usually, these situations resolve themselves within 24 hours. What happens to Sophie tonight? Maria asked. We'll have to call social services. They'll place her in temporary foster care until we can locate her father. Foster care? Sophie's voice was tiny and terrified. Maria looked at the scared little girl, then back at the officer.
What if I take care of her tonight? Just until you find her father?
The officer shook his head. Ma'am, I appreciate your concern, but we can't release a child to a stranger.
You're not a registered guardian.
Maria felt helpless. After everything they'd been through together, Sophie would have to spend the night with strangers in an unfamiliar place. But then, something unexpected happened. Wait, said a voice from behind them. They all turned around. A woman in a social services uniform had just walked in. I couldn't help but overhear, the woman said. Ma'am, what's your name? Maria Santos. The woman checked something on her tablet. Maria Santos, age 28, lives on Elm Street? Yes, that's me. Maria was confused. How did this woman know her information? I have some unusual news. Are you familiar with the Williams family? Maria's heart stopped.
Williams? That's Sophie's last name.
The social worker nodded grimly.
Mr. David Williams reported his daughter missing 3 hours ago. But ma'am, there's something you need to know.
The woman paused, looking directly at Maria with an expression that was half surprise, half concern. Mr. Williams isn't just any father looking for his child. He's the CEO of Williams Industries. He's worth over $200 million, and he's offering a $5 million reward for anyone who finds his daughter safely. Maria's legs felt weak. She gripped the edge of the desk to keep from falling over. Sophie looked up at her with those innocent blue eyes, having no idea that the poor nanny who had spent her last $20 to feed her was about to have her entire life changed forever. But the social worker wasn't finished. Ma'am, there's more. Mr. Williams has been frantically searching for Sophie, and he's traced her last known location to that park where you found her. But here's the thing that's going to shock you. The woman paused, and Maria felt like the whole world was holding its breath. He's been looking for you specifically. Maria's mouth fell open. Looking for me? But why? I don't understand. I've never met Mr. Williams. I don't even know who he is. The social worker checked her tablet again, her face growing more serious. Ma'am, 3 months ago, did you work as a nanny for the Johnson family on Oak Street? Maria nodded slowly. Yes, but only for 2 weeks. Mrs. Johnson decided she didn't need help anymore. What she didn't say was that Mrs. Johnson had fired her for being too attached to the children. Maria had cried when she'd had to leave little Tommy and Sarah. Well, during those 2 weeks, did anything unusual happen? Any emergencies? Maria thought back. Those had been some of the happiest days of her life, even though they were short. The Johnson children had been so sweet, and she'd loved taking care of them. But then her heart skipped a beat as she remembered. The fire, she whispered. What fire? Sophie asked, looking up at Maria with curious eyes. The social worker nodded grimly. Tell me exactly what happened. Maria's hands started shaking as the memories came flooding back. It was a Thursday afternoon. Mrs. Johnson had gone to the store, and I was watching Tommy and Sarah. Tommy was 4, Sarah was 6. We were playing in the backyard when I smelled smoke. Sophie moved closer to Maria, sensing something scary was coming. The house next door was on fire, Maria continued, her voice getting quieter. Big orange flames were coming out of the windows. I could hear someone screaming inside. The social worker leaned forward. What did you do? I told Tommy and Sarah to run to the far end of the yard and stay there. Then I ran into the burning house. You what? The police officer who had been listening looked shocked. I know it was stupid, Maria said quickly. But someone was screaming for help. I couldn't just ignore it. Who was in the house? The social worker asked, though her expression suggested she already knew the answer. Maria closed her eyes, remembering that terrifying day. A little girl. She was about Sophie's age, trapped in an upstairs bedroom. The stairs were already on fire, but I managed to get up there. She was so scared, hiding under her bed, crying for her daddy. Sophie gasped. Was she okay? I wrapped her in a blanket and carried her down the stairs. The fire department arrived just as we got out. We both went to the hospital for smoke inhalation, but we were okay. And then what happened? The social worker pressed. Maria shrugged. The little girl's father showed up at the hospital. He was crying and thanking me over and over. He kept trying to give me money, but I wouldn't take it. I told him any parent would have done the same thing.
Do you remember the little girl's name?
Maria thought hard.
I think... Emma?
Yes, Emma Williams. The social worker and police officer exchanged meaningful looks. Ma'am, the social worker said slowly, Emma Williams is Sophie's older sister. The world seemed to stop spinning. Maria looked down at Sophie, who was staring up at her with wide, amazed eyes. You saved my sister? That can't be right, Maria stammered. The fire was 3 months ago. If Mr. Williams was Emma's father, why didn't he remember me when he was looking for Sophie? Because, said a deep voice from behind them, I've been looking for you ever since that day, and I never got your full name. Everyone turned around. A tall man in a black suit stood in the doorway of the police station. His hair was messy, his tie was crooked, and his eyes were red from crying. But the moment Sophie saw him, she screamed with joy. Daddy! Sophie ran into his arms so fast that she almost knocked him over. David Williams, one of the richest men in the city, dropped to his knees and hugged his daughter like he'd never let her go again. Sophie! Oh my God, Sophie! I was so scared. I've been looking everywhere for you. Tears streamed down his face. Are you hurt? Are you okay? I'm okay, Daddy. Maria took care of me. She bought me food and promised I wouldn't be alone, and she was so nice to me, and David Williams looked up at Maria over Sophie's head. His eyes went wide with recognition. It's you, he whispered. Maria felt like she was in a dream. This couldn't be real. The man whose daughter she'd saved from a fire was the same man whose other daughter she'd just helped find her way home. I've been looking for you for 3 months, David said, standing up slowly, still holding Sophie's hand. I went back to the hospital, but they said you'd already been discharged. I went to the Johnson house, but Mrs. Johnson said she'd let you go and didn't have your contact information. You were looking for me? Maria could barely speak. I hired private investigators. I put ads in newspapers. I even offered a reward for information about the woman who saved my daughter's life. David's voice broke. And now you've saved Sophie too. The social worker stepped forward. Mr. Williams, your daughter is safe thanks to Miss Santos here. She spent her own money to feed Sophie, missed work to help her, and was prepared to take her home for the night to keep her safe. David stared at Maria in amazement. You did all that for a stranger? Maria felt embarrassed by all the attention. Any decent person would have done the same thing. No, David said firmly. Not everyone would have run into a burning building to save a child. Not everyone would spend their last $20 to feed a lost little girl. Not everyone would risk their job to help someone they'd never met. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a checkbook. 3 months ago, I tried to reward you for saving Emma's life. You wouldn't take it. But now, he started writing, you've saved both my daughters. You're not getting out of here without accepting what you deserve. Mr. Williams, please, I don't want your money. I'm just happy Sophie is safe. But David had already torn the check from his book. He held it out to Maria. This is not negotiable. You are taking this money. Maria looked at the check and felt her legs go weak. $5 million. More money than she could spend in 10 lifetimes. I can't. This is too much. It's not enough, David said seriously. Do you have any idea what my daughters mean to me? After my wife died, Sophie and Emma became my whole world. Without them, I have nothing. You gave me back everything that matters. Sophie tugged on her father's sleeve. Daddy, Maria's really poor. She lives in a tiny apartment with holes in the roof. And she gave me her food money even though she was hungry. David's face grew very serious. He knelt down so he was at Maria's eye level. Maria, can I ask you something personal? Maria nodded, still in shock. What do you do for work? I clean houses? Maria said quietly. Well, I used to. I got fired today because I was helping Sophie instead of going to my job. How much do you make in a year? Maria felt embarrassed. About $18,000. Sometimes less, if I can't find enough work. David was quiet for a long moment. Then he looked up at the social worker and police officer.
Could we have some privacy, please? They nodded and stepped outside, leaving David, Maria, and Sophie alone.
Maria, David said gently, I want to offer you something, and I need you to really think about it before you say no. Maria waited. I need a full-time nanny for my girls. Someone who will love them like their own children. Someone who will put their safety and happiness above everything else, including money. He paused. I've seen what kind of person you are. You're exactly what my daughters need. Daddy, yes! Sophie clapped her hands. Maria should come live with us. The job pays $100,000 a year, plus a room in my house, plus full health insurance, plus a car to use. David's voice was steady and serious. But more than that, you'd be part of our family. Emma already asks about you every day. She draws pictures of the brave lady who saved her from the fire. Maria felt tears coming to her eyes. Mr. Williams. David, please, call me David. David, I don't know what to say. Say yes, Sophie whispered, taking Maria's hand. Please say yes. I want you to take care of me and Emma. Maria looked down at this sweet little girl who had already been through so much loss in her young life. She thought about Emma, whom she'd carried out of a burning building and barely had time to say goodbye to. She thought about her tiny, leaky apartment, her empty refrigerator, and the constant worry about money that kept her awake at night. But mostly, she thought about the warm feeling she got when she took care of children. The feeling that she was exactly where she belonged. Yes, she whispered. Then louder. Yes, I would love to take care of your daughters. Sophie squealed with happiness. David smiled, the first real smile Maria had seen from him. There's one more thing, David said. He picked up the check again and pressed it firmly into Maria's hands. This is a signing bonus for saving Emma's life and for taking such good care of Sophie today. Please don't argue with me about it. Maria stared at the check through her tears. $5 million would solve every financial problem she'd ever had. She could buy a real house. She could help other families in need. She could make sure she never had to choose between paying rent and buying food again. I don't know how to thank you, she whispered. You already did. You loved my children when they needed it most. 2 weeks later, Maria stood in the beautiful bedroom that was now hers, in the most amazing house she'd ever seen. Through her window, she could see Sophie and Emma playing in the backyard, happy, safe, and loved. The $5 million was already changing lives. Maria had paid off the medical bills of 3 families in her old neighborhood. She'd bought groceries for every hungry family she knew. She'd even tracked down Mrs. Henderson and paid to fix the roof on her house because Maria believed in treating meanness with kindness. But the money wasn't the real reward. The real reward was the sound of Emma running downstairs every morning, calling, Maria, Maria, are you awake? The real reward was Sophie holding her hand during thunderstorms, because she felt safe with Maria there. The real reward was David telling her, with tears in his eyes, I haven't seen my daughters this happy since their mother died. As Maria watched the girls play, she thought about something her grandmother used to tell her. When you have a good heart, the universe finds a way to reward it. She had spent her whole life helping others, even when she had nothing to give. She'd lost jobs, missed meals, and worried about rent, all because she couldn't ignore someone who needed help. But in the end, her kindness had brought her everything she'd ever dreamed of. A real family, financial security, and the knowledge that she was exactly where she belonged. And it all started with a simple choice in a park to stop and comfort a lost little girl, not knowing that her father was a millionaire CEO. Sometimes, the smallest acts of kindness create the biggest miracles.